Hi, and welcome to the channel. Well, as promised, here's a history video for you, but one with a slight difference, as I'll be reading directly from the memoirs of a Boston pilot. I'll be doing a few of these as and when I'm able, and the first book I'll be reading from is called Riech Intruders, and it's a history of RAF Light Bomber Raids in World War II. It's written by Martin W. Bowman and published by Pen and Sword Books. This isn't a sponsored video, but I have contacted them to ensure I wasn't transgressing any copyright laws, and they were happy for me to make the video and have even offered me some titles for a giveaway further down the line. I'll talk a little more about them at the end, as I think they'll be of interest to a good number of you. Anyway, this time we'll be looking at an operation by 226 Squadron of the RAF conducting the first daylight bombing raid of the war on Paris on the 8th of March 1942. The target was the Ford Motor Works at Matford near Poissy, which was producing tanks and other military vehicles for the Germans. The Bostons would have to fly at a very low level to and from the target without fighter escort, as they didn't have the range to accompany them. 226 Squadron consisted of a healthy mixture of pilots and crew from around the globe, including New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Argentina, the USA, a Catholic from Northern Ireland, and a Protestant from the South. Bostons were the aircraft of choice for this mission, and we'll be hearing the memories of Pilot Officer Peter Saunders, who was navigator-observer on this flight. Others of the crew consisted of Pilot Officer W.J. Bill O'Connell, a Canadian, and Flight Lieutenant Douglas Chappie Chapman as wireless operator and air gunner. In Saunders' own words, "We all felt unusually keyed up at briefing. The target was an important first that no one had attacked before. We didn't know what to expect. We knew that split-second flying and navigation, map reading and target recognition would all be vital, and we realised that if we failed to achieve swiftness and surprise, we would be sitting ducks for the German ack and fighters. The wing commander had warned us to be prepared for 50% losses. After takeoff, we swept low in formation over the airfield and then settled on track for the French coast. The sea crossing was uneventful, save for the half-apprehensive, half-jubilant mood of expectancy that we always felt and had much more strongly because of the closeness of everything when we were crossing at 0 feet. Everything below seemed to flash past at breakneck speed. Would we make the coast unobserved, as we hoped, or had they got word of our coming and were waiting, defences alert, to destroy us? The weather was good, the visibility a little too good, but haze was rising from the sea to help screen our approach, and enough broken cloud above, if it should last, to give us some cover from the enemy fighters. The cliffs of Cabourg on the skyline. We corrected 5 degrees to port. "No ships around," called Bill. They were always a danger, these little coastal fishing smacks and trawlers, which saw you coming and often radioed word of your approach. Squealers we used to dub them, and, a regrettable necessity, shot them up or sank them if need arose. This time none of them were in sight, which was lucky for us as well as for them. The haze and the lowness and swiftness of our approach might get us to the coast before we were seen. We watched the cliffs come nearer and nearer. Not a shot, not a signal. We were up and over. Sea suddenly changed to land. Our engines sounded more vibrant. Startled heads on the ground jerked upwards, eyes incredulous and momentarily alarmed, but we could only detect the onset of surprise as they flashed beneath us and we overhead. The Wingco was turning the formation smoothly onto our new course. Next stop, Paris, just 100 miles away to the southeast. We didn't pause to dwell on our good luck or the surprise we had so far achieved, for at low level something happens every second, and we were looking out in front. What a fast-moving kaleidoscope it was. Neat checkered fields, trim, square-cut by green-rimmed ditches, came rushing towards and beneath us like a swift-moving film. So close, it seemed, that we could see the very structure of the soil and might have reached out and touched it. A small airfield in front of us, with a few low buildings, blister hangars and aircraft all innocuous-looking beneath its expert camouflage. No time to line up an attack on it. Paris was calling. 4 stabs of fire from the wing commander's nose, and the rest of us followed suit, taking a target as it came through the sights. Then it was past. The ground rose slightly ahead of us. We swept up the slope, and as we breasted it, a double-track railway line flashed beneath us. Maps and watches checked. Must be the line from Pont-l'Evêque south to Lisieux. Ground speed OK. 24 miles to Serquigny. 6 miles flying, near a 6 1/4. Crossing a road, hedge-lined, we had a split-second glimpse of 2 Hun soldiers diving headlong and panic-stricken towards a ditch. We hoped fervently that it was full and foul. I looked out at the other Bostons on our port and thrilled at the sight. They were flying along, wingtip to wingtip, and they looked like the arm of a gigantic flail sweeping across the fields and skimming hedge tops. Each man was taking his own hurdles. It might indeed have been the Grand National, but with the jumps spaced unequally for each horse, with a tremendously greater thrill and excitement. I felt the nose of our aircraft rise and looked around to see telegraph wires straight in front. We leapt up and over a branch of a tree, and then we were rushing down ploughed slopes into a miniature valley. A plump-faced girl in yellow blouse and dark brown skirt was standing in the garden of a whitewashed farmhouse. She swung round with a look of startled amazement, and then she was lost to our view. We seemed to surge up the other side of the little valley, over the top, a wide, clean road, and right beneath us, like a cameo, a French family taking their Sunday stroll. What, I wondered, was racing through their minds as they stood gaping at us? The Dutch had spirit. They had run, waved, given V for victory. One could almost see their eyes light up and their lips say, "We won't give up." But the French? Sometimes they waved. Further on, a stream, then a grey stone cottage. I could see right in through a long open window. An old man with a beard, wearing a light smock, dark trousers and a cap with a stick in his hand was sitting inside. He scrambled from his chair and hobbled to the window. As we shot overhead, I had a momentary glimpse of him staring upwards, his old eyes alive with sudden interest. Houses and spires on the port bow. Serquigny. We crossed the river. Flying Officer George Sayers, our squadron navigator in the Wing Commander's plane, is making a great job of the trip. I envy him his chance leading a show like this, but I admire his skill and calmness. I can see him in the transparent glass nose of G. George, map in hand, placidly sucking his dry pipe, looking out at the ground to either side and ahead, coolly noting the landmarks, sizing them up, checking his map. No room for even a momentary slip-up on a trip like this. The Wing Commander is giving him every chance. His flying is superb, and his leadership quick and decisive. He's putting everything he knows into this, his big bulk crouched behind the stick, his helmeted head looking small and oddly incongruous on huge shoulders, and his big hands clamped on the control column, responding to every adjustment that his brain demands. He's flying terrifyingly low. The tips of his air screws seem to crop the grass, and as he pulls over trees in his path, the branches appear to bend and scrape along the underside of the Boston's fuselage. The Bostons were lovely machines, powerful looking with their big, blunt engines, yet smooth flying, sleek, graceful, and they were beautiful to watch, racing along, side by side, fast and low, rising and falling to the contour of the ground, just like darting swallows. We were accustomed to low level, but this was the very lowest that we had ever flown. As we stuck close to the Wing Commander's plane in formation, my heart jumped involuntarily from time to time as we swept over hedges and fields, as houses and trees slithered close past our wings, and we pulled ourselves precariously over the lip of gullies and embankments. It seemed at times recklessly and unnecessarily low, but the whole success of our mission, and our survival too, hung on the surprise that we must achieve. Flying low was the best method of ensuring that an enemy gunner would have little time to draw a bead on us or an enemy fighter spot us. Where were the Me-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s? Were their defences confused? Another flight of Bostons had been sent over as a decoy, flying some distance to the north of our track in the hope of attracting the German fighters away from us and then making homewards while we made straight and fast for the French capital. We passed Evreux, a mile to the south, and altered course a few degrees to port. George had all the strings in his fingers and was pulling us confidently and surely to our target. In less than 10 minutes we should be there. The Wingco had never let up for a moment and was still flying as brilliantly and as confidently as ever. His daisy cutting was, if anything, getting better or worse. The pattern below us looked more ordered now, and everything seemed to be running and pointing in one direction, as if to say, Paris, this way to Paris. We shot over a large building with a huge sign reading Dubeau, Dubon, Dubonnet. The words seemed to be shouting, "You must come to Paris. You must come to Paris." Damn it, I thought. I remembered I'd be seeing the city only at a distance, for our target was Poissy. Bearing in mind the object of our mission, I hardly had a feeling of Paris in the springtime. We came nearer and could see the Seine, highway to Paris. We crossed the railway line from Bouille to Montgazincourt in an instant and were flying along the great river skirting its southern bank. It looked muddy and yellow, but the sun glistened on its surface, conveying an air of somnolent majesty. Everything breathed peace. It seemed a cruel paradox that we were coming to shatter it. Ahead of us, in the hollow of the riverbank, stood a factory, its big brick buildings ugly and squat against the beauty of the river, its chimneys rising stark and impressive against the sky. The wingco did not alter course. He climbed slightly, skimming the factory roof. We vaulted upwards and squeezed between the stacks. Our starboard wing seemed to cut one of them in two. I saw down into the black, cavernous mouth of another as it slid beneath us. This was the last lap. In just over 2 minutes from now, we would be on target. Involuntarily, we seemed to have closed formation, tighter than before, as though each crew among us was afraid of being left behind or cheated out of our big moment. "Bombs fused," I called. Bill replied tersely, but I could detect the thrill in his voice. "Yep, check me on bomb doors." "Any moment now. A couple of miles in front?" I yelled through the mic to Bill and Chappie. Things were happening fast. We were too tense with watchfulness and excitement to make conversation. There was no time. I had my target map in my hand, but we were still flying too low to be able to see what lay ahead beyond a fringe of trees. I felt a momentary panic lest we should miss the target, and I prayed fervently that George might spot it. The trees were right in front. They rushed at us. Then the river. We were nearly across, and beyond a wooded island in the river lay Poissy, but George had spotted it, and a moment later so had I. We had come out slightly to the south. It was a couple of 100 yards up the river. The wingco swung his Boston round and began to climb. We hung on his tail. "Bomb doors open," I bawled to Bill. "They're open," he yelled back. We were at bombing height, 400 feet, and levelling out. I had a momentary sight of Paris to the southeast, but it was a glimpse only as we turned. I felt brief disappointment I couldn't see more, but the Matford works lay ahead and the wingco was running in. What a perfect target. A huge, long, rectangular building lying close to the riverbank and a tower nearby with the name Matford on it. How obliging to mount it there to help make doubly sure this was our target. I saw the wingco's bombs go winging down. As we were going in, I saw them land, some smack in the middle of a concentration of lorries alongside the factory, the rest on the factory itself. We swept in behind him. Just as our bombs went down, his exploded. The terrific blast shook us and lifted us bodily upwards. Debris rose high in the air and dust swirled around. Some flak was streaming up towards us from the ground. There was a sharp crunching against our starboard wing, and the aircraft shuddered violently. Then we were past. The other boys were coming in behind us. Chappie was looking out to watch our bombs burst. "Plumb in the middle. Good work," he yelled jubilantly, and we knew our bombs had hit. Now we were losing height and turning on our course for home. Chappie was shouting out the score as he watched the other bombs explode. He was finding it hard to count. The Matford works were going up in smoke, which almost hid them from view. The flak had been light, the wingco's leadership had been superb, George's navigation perfect, and the attack an obviously outstanding success. We were down once more on the deck, in formation, en route for home. We had a long way to go to get there, but happy thoughts filled our minds. What a perfect day, what an experience. The target decidedly pranged. What an achievement for Wingco and for George to have led this show. To have carried it off like this, what a thrill for them. What a feather in their caps. What ragging, what backslapping for them when we get back. They deserve it, they can be proud. It was then that we saw that Wingco was having trouble with his bomb doors. They were still hanging open. He was trying to close them, for we saw them come up, stick, and then fall open again. He made 2 more attempts with no success. Had the flak damaged them, or could it be Wingco was hurt? He was still flying, skillfully, holding his course, but terrifyingly low. A stretch of thickly wooded ground loomed ahead of us. We swept up and over it. The Wingco's props seemed to trail on the branches below. Without warning, it came. His port wing cleaved into a trunk. His aircraft lurched violently. We could not see him clearly, but he was trying desperately to hold her up, trying to save George and the glass nose of the plane. It was no good. The Boston tottered, slipped heavily sideways and crashed into the trees. Still on its side, it went hurtling on. Trunks splintered and broke in its path. There was a blinding flash of white-blue flame, and then the horror of the scene was cloaked in fierce red fire. We couldn't stop. Our thoughts crowded in on each other. Chappie from his gunner's turret was the only one who could see. He said nothing. Neither could we. We sped homewards. All 6 226 Squadron Bostons placed their bombs on the factory. Damage to the Matford works was later estimated at 35 to 40 million French francs, but more importantly, it was out of commission for 3 months. Okay, well, I'm sure you'll let me know if you like this new format, and if you like the sound of this book, there's a link in the description box below. If you use it, you'll help support this channel, and though they do publish works of general history, Pen and Sword are primarily known for their military history and have sections specifically on World War II, World War I, maritime history, and of course aviation. Enjoy having a rummage around, and I'll see you for the next one. Oh, hang on, if you do visit their website and see something you fancy hearing a reading from, then do feel free to let me know. And finally, a great big thanks to patron Josh, who gets the credits all to himself. If you can't bear the thought of him being on his own any longer, then feel free to head over to my Patreon page and remedy the situation. There's a link in the comments section. Okay, cheerio chaps, and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.